Rock smash! Get it? Like Hulk smash, but he's the Rock and it's the smashing machine. Just let's do a thought exercise. What was Dwayne Johnson, The Rock's last good movie? I myself would say Pain and Gain, but then I'm a total weirdo. But I think critically, most would say Furious 7. After changing the hierarchy of power in the DCU, The Rock has been on a bit of a downslope, and it's pretty clear why. He became too safe, too managed, too much of a brand. Well, thank goodness for Benny Safdie, because he saw something in The Rock that a lot of us haven't cared to look for in quite a while. And that's pure magnetism and vulnerability. So, the big question for such a big guy is the smashing machine not just Dwayne Johnson's best performance, but is it the comeback he needs? Johnson transforms himself into UFC legend Mark Kerr. It's 1997 and the UFC is in its infancy. Mark has made a name for himself by never having lost a fight. But he has a dirty little secret. He's addicted to opioids. After he loses a bout in Japan, he decides to go to rehab, and then the true recovery starts. Supported by his girlfriend Dawn, played by Emily Blunt, and his mixed martial arts friend slash sometimes rival Mark Coleman, played by actual MMA fighter Ryan Bader, Mark goes on a long journey to find himself and become the champion he knows he is. Director Benny Safdie hasn't made a film since he co-directed Uncut Gems with his brother in 2019. The Safdie film this most reminds me of is his and his brother's documentary, Lenny Cook. That film was about a high school basketball prospect who never quite made it in the NBA. Mark Kerr doesn't have as tragic a backstory as that. We start with him as a champion and then see his fall and how he picks himself up again. But what's similar about both films is something that Benny Safdie is drawn to, and that's losers. The film jumpstarts once he loses his first fight. He's won so much that he can't even conceive of what it would be like to lose. And more so than the fighting and the physicality, Dwayne Johnson surprises most when Mark is at his most vulnerable. Let's be honest, we're used to Johnson being the tough guy, being all swagger, being all charisma, sometimes even being just plain stone-faced. And in this movie, he gets to show an array of emotions. And that means Johnson has to be totally open and vulnerable and emotional. There are scenes where he breaks down crying after he loses his first match, when he can't admit to himself that he has an opioid addiction. He feels so much guilt and shame at losing, at letting people down, at letting his trainers down, and his friend down, and his girlfriend down, that it just comes out of him. And I think what attracted Safdie to this material is that Mark Kerr is a contradiction. He's this behemoth, but he's a gentle giant. And Johnson plays him as soft-spoken, polite, almost unwilling to rock the boat. So you'll see him dominate and pummel opponents in the ring, but then be this total sweetheart who gets a tummy ache when he rides on a roller coaster. And Johnson plays those two sides so well. We know he has the physicality, but what we haven't seen from him in so long is willing to look beaten down and broken and sad. And it's really a credit to Johnson that he recognized the flaw in his movie star resume and that he took some time away and has come back with this actor showcase, really. Supporting him is Emily Blunt. And in most of these sports movies, the actress is usually the nagging wife. To be fair, that is a lot of this character. But to her credit, Blunt plays it very well. Dawn feels a distance with Mark. She wants to be let in, and she doesn't know how when he's so focused on training and fighting. But at the same time, she's also a textbook narcissist and either doesn't understand or isn't willing to understand what he's actually going through. You have sort of a cliche character, but it's played very well by Blunt. And that's a tricky balance, especially when Blunt, the past few years, has kind of just taken these wife roles, and we know she's capable of so much. That being said, she and Johnson do have some excellent chemistry when they're on their high highs, and they do a good job of spitting venom and arguing on their low lows. Safdie isn't interested in the usual sports movie model, and that means the pacing is a little wonky at times. This doesn't have the typical rise and fall of a sports movie, especially since it starts with him losing and then takes us on a journey where he's on a collision course with his friend Mark, and almost a warrior-esque battle between two bros. But even the way that unfolds surprises us. And I think if the scenes between Mark and Dawn get a little repetitive and exhausting, the scenes between Mark and the other Mark have a lot of juice to them. That's where most of the emotion and conflict is. And I have to say, that's the aspect of this movie that is the most moving. This is a sports movie that's more interested in the man than the sport. And I think those expecting a typical cliched sports film will be totally disappointed. They'll be thrown off by the rhythms of this. But those who want to see Dwayne Johnson in a new light will be rewarded. Because even though this is about a giant guy who's good at fighting, is very charismatic, this is Johnson disappearing into the role. There's a metatextual element to the Smashing Machine, in that Mark Kerr is on top of the world and then comes crashing down and has to build himself up. And The Rock has been on top of the world for movies for so many years, and then the audience just got so tired of him that he kind of came crashing down. And this is him building himself up. This is possibly the start of a comeback. And judging by this performance, I'd say if Johnson wants to take more risks and stretch his chops more, I am here for it. This is a surprisingly excellent performance from him. The Smashing Machine isn't your typical sports drama. Dwayne Johnson proves that he has what it takes to be a serious actor, and director Benny Safdie capitalizes on his charisma and his physicality to bring us a compelling docudrama. I give The Smashing Machine a respectable 3.5 stars out of 5. If you like this review, please like and subscribe or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. I am wearing the t-shirt of my good friend Ramiro, and this month he is actually competing for Gold's Gym's Strongest Man competition. He won it last year, and I'm rooting for him this year. Go Ram!